In Creo Parametric, you can use ISDX, the Interactive Surface Design extension, to create freeform surfaces using the Style tool. Let's take a look at how to do that. Here I have a part for an air intake cover. You can see that there is a lot of geometry missing right over here. To orient you to my model, essentially we have three surfaces. We have one rotational blend, a second rotational blend, and an extruded surface. Let's use ISDX to connect them. So to get into ISDX, I will click on the Style icon in the ribbon. That takes me into the environment. Let me turn on the display of my grid for a moment, and you can see what it's using as the active plane, some kind of plane over here, but that's not what I want to use. Let me turn on my datum plane display. For the first couple curves, I'm going to create some planar curves at the bottom. So I can right mouse click and hold, and from the pop-up menu I can choose to set the active plane to the X plane. That's what I do want to use. To unclutter the screen, let me then turn off my plane display. And so for creating the first curve, I'm going to leave the grid displayed for a moment, and then I'll turn it off just so you can see how the model is oriented. To create a new curve, I will hold down the right mouse button, and then from the pop-up menu, I can get to the New Curve command. And this first curve, right now it's set to a free curve. I can tell that because I am looking in the upper left-hand corner at the dashboard for the style curve. If I hold down the right mouse button, I can choose to make it a planar curve. And then first I'm going to create the curve incorrectly. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and lock into the vertex over here. And it's hard to tell. I can see that there's a little green X there indicating that it is a fixed point. It is locked into that particular vertex. I will hold down the Shift key again and then grab, oops, looks like I didn't get the vertex. Let me hit the undo button. Let me hold down the Shift key. I think I was actually holding down the Control key. I hold down the Shift key and there I get the vertex. That's good. I'm going to hit the check mark so that it can complete that curve and get out of the tool for creating more curves. Then I will double click on the curve, which is the same thing as edit definition. And I want to show you this is why I actually didn't want to grab the vertex. If I click on the vertex now, there's a green bar that allows me to adjust the tangency. And actually right now is a good time to turn off the display of the grid. I'll go back to the Style tab, Operations, Preferences, uncheck the box for Display Grid. That's good. Now let's go back to the Style Curve Edit. So here I have the tangent bar, and you can see I can move it all around here. Same thing with the one over on the other end. Let's grab the tangent bar. And let's say I actually wanted this curve to be tangent to the existing curve in the model. If I go to the Tangent tab, this is another way where you can adjust the tangent conditions. And I can say, hey, instead of free, let's try to change this to tangent, and it doesn't work. Same thing if I right-click over the bar and choose tangent, it's not changing. That's because I grabbed the vertex and not actually the edge of that particular surface. So let's cancel out of here. Probably the easiest thing to do is just to delete the existing curve and start over. So let's create a new curve, and it's still set to planar. Let me hold down the Shift key, and this time I'm going to grab the edge, and there's a little green circle, an open circle there, and that indicates that we have a soft point. That point is constrained to exist on that edge. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. Let's do Shift and then click on the particular edge. That's good. Let me hit the check mark in order to get out of style creation. And then you can right click and hold and choose edit definition when the curve is selected. Or in ISDX, something that's a little different, double clicking on an entity is the same thing as edit definition, as opposed to in standard mode where double clicking is the same thing as edit or edit dimensions. Okay, let me select this particular point. I'm also going to show you the point tab. So right now it's using length ratio and it's got a value of almost 1. So if it's a value of 0 or 1, it's going to be at the end point. And I just dragged it to the end over there. I can grab the little green tangency bar and adjust it. Before I change it to being tangent, let's grab the endpoint on the other side. And again, I can adjust the tangency. You can see the length ratio on this side is very close to 0, but not exactly 0. If I drag it right to the vertex, it changes it to a value of 0. And just one thing to point out, if you ever see any of these empty boxes next to a dimensional value, that means if you check the box, it will export this particular value as a dimension that you can edit in standard mode or include in a family table. Okay, so let's go to the tangent tab, and I can right click on the tangent bar and I can say, hey, let's make this tangent. You can see in this case it actually changed to tangent, and now if I grab this, I can control the strength of the tangency. You can see that the length of the tangency is changing in the dashboard tab, and you can eyeball it, or sometimes I get a little particular and say, hey, let's try value of 60, or maybe I want it to be a little stronger. Hey, let's try value of 80, whatever you want to do. And let's do the same thing on the other side. Select it and then make this tangent to the edge. And if I take a look at the curve, let's maybe do a value of 50 on this side. Select the other endpoint. Probably 80 is too much. Let me just do a value of 50 on both. Again, it's really not necessary to put in a proper number for the length. Best thing to do in most cases is just eyeball it. All right, that's good for my first curve. Let's hit the check mark, and I'll do the same thing for the bottom curve on the other side. Let's do it a little faster this time. Let me make sure to click on the background of the graphics area to deselect everything. I'll create a curve. Let's hold down the Shift key and create a soft point there and a soft point there. Hit the check mark. Double click on the curve and drag it to the end, and then right click and make it tangent, and same thing for the other point. Grab it. Oops, I did not get it to snap in there. There we go. I just held down the Shift key and then grabbed it. Looks like I missed it the first time. Let me right click and go to tangent, and this time I'll just eyeball it on both sides rather than plugging in a number. That's good for my second curve. Let's hit the check mark for that one and then click on the background of the graphics area to deselect. And then I'm going to create another couple of curves going from here to this sort of like corner, but again, I'm going to grab an edge. I'm not going to grab a vertex. So let's create a new curve, and this time instead of a planar curve, let's change to free. And once again, I will hold down the Shift key and snap into that curve or that edge. Let me hold down the Shift key and snap into this one. Hit the check mark, double click on the curve to edit it, grab the point, drag it to the end, and let's make it tangent to the curve for this point. Let's drag it to the end. And instead of making it tangent to the edge, I'm going to make it tangent to the surface. Let's right click on it and choose Surface Tangent. And that way it's a little more, organic in shape. And again, we can adjust the length of the, it's not letting me adjust the length of the tangent part. Because I have Surface Tangent, for some reason it's not allowing me to adjust the length, but that is okay for that one. Let's hit the check mark. I'll do the same thing on the other side. Let me deselect everything. I always forget to deselect. And then right click, create a new curve, hold down the Shift key, snap into that edge, hold down the Shift key, snap into this edge, and hit the check mark, double click the curve, select the point, and we can right click and say let's make it tangent to the curve and drag it to the end. By the way, you'll see that we have a faint outline of the original shape of the curve. That lets you see how much you are changing it. And let's grab the other end point, drag it to the end, right click, surface tangent. And again, just want to verify for making it surface tangent. Doesn't give you the properties for adjusting the length of the tangency. All right, that's good for that one. Now we can go about seeing the shape of the surfaces that we can generate here. Let me right mouse click and hold and choose surface. And I will select the first boundary curve, and then I'll hold the shift key. Let's go around in this particular, oops, not the shift key, the control key. I will hold down the control key, grab this edge, and then control and grab this edge, or actually that curve, and then this edge. You can see a preview of the surface that is being generated, and it's automatically applying a tangent condition on that side and a tangent condition on that side, and no boundary condition over here. I actually want it to be normal, so let me turn on my plane display for a moment, and then I can right mouse click, and you can see the different boundary conditions. I will choose normal, and oh, looks like it automatically made it normal to the appropriate reference. I didn't have to select a plane. Let's turn off the display of planes. So I like that for the first surface so far. Let me then hit the check mark to complete that surface. Let's left click on the background of the graphics area to deselect it. And now let's create another surface and select one curve, control, grab the edge, control, grab the curve, control, grab that one. And again, it looks like two of our boundary conditions are correct. Let me right click and choose normal. And if there's some ambiguity or Creo Parametric doesn't know what you want to be normal to, it will prompt you to select what you want. And let me take a look over here. I'm not sure I like this particular curve. I might change it. Let me see. See if I can grab this. And yeah, no, it's not allowing me to change the angle for the surface tangent, but that's okay. All right, so let's complete that one. And now let's try making the intermediate surface. Let me go to surface, select curve, control, and grab the other boundaries. So that's okay. I can see a little bit of inflection here that I don't like, but let's hit the check mark. Actually, I forgot to check the boundary conditions. Let's double click on the surface, get into edit definition, and it looks like it automatically applied boundary conditions that we wanted. All right, so now we can go about refining the shape of the various surfaces. And to do that, we will create some intermediate curves. And I can do this with the surfaces already existing. I don't have to go back into the past history in the style tree. So to create some new curves, might actually be helpful to hide these surfaces for a moment. Let me select this and just choose hide and hide and hide. And maybe I want to create a planar curve sort of in the middle here. Let's turn on my axis display. And let me turn on my plane display for a moment. And I don't think I need to see, well, yeah, let me just leave the other planes visible. So let's create a plane that will exist only within the style feature. If I go to the drop-down list from set active plane, I can create an internal plane, a plane that only exists within this feature. And I will select the axis as a reference, then hold down the control key and select this plane. And right now it's not going where I want it to. I can slice through here and say, yeah, let's try 135 degrees to begin with. I can always adjust that later on. Let's click the OK button. And now let me turn on my grid display as a visual reference. Click the OK button. Turn off my plane display. Always make your screen as uncluttered as possible. And now I can create a new curve. And I will right click to make it planar. And now I'm going to hold down the Shift key and click on the different curves. And it snaps in there. So that's the initial shape that we have. And we can play around with this. I'm going to give you a heads up. I'm not going to like this curve. I'm actually going to create a different one. Let me go to Preferences. I just want to show you how, sometimes you go down a path and you're like, I don't like that. Hey, you can always make changes. And turn off the axis display while I'm at it. All right, so there's the curve. Let me double click on it to change it. And here I can say, hey, let's make this one. I want to make it, let's see if vertical works. Nope. Based on my orientation, for some reason, I want horizontal, so it goes straight up and down. Same thing for the one on the other side. Let's make it horizontal. There you are. And adjust the length of it. And then it's like, hey, maybe I want to throw in a midpoint over here, so I can right click and add midpoint, and that gives me another manipulation location. So there is an initial look at an intermediate curve. So now I can hit the check mark, and let's bring back those surfaces that I hid. I'm just grabbing them out of the model tree. So then if we want to adjust the surfaces to use those different curves, well, we can double click on the surface to edit definition, and this would actually be an internal curve to the surface. I can right mouse click and hold to activate the internal collector. You can also click here on the dashboard to activate the internal curves collector. You can also get to it here from the tab, and I will select that particular curve and it'll end up adjusting the shape. Let me hit the check mark, and same thing for this surface. Let me double click, activate the internal collector, and grab this one, and give me some warning about the surface connections. I'll click, actually, before I do this one, because it was giving me the warning, let me handle this one first. Let me cancel out, because these side surfaces are actually parents of that intermediate surface. So let's right click, activate the internal collector, and select that curve. So it adjusts the shape, hit the check mark, and now we can try adjusting this one. Activate the internal collector, grab this curve. And you'll notice this time it did not give me the warning, and it actually made this surface even worse. You can see that we have some really ugly inflection over here. So this particular curve is not working for me. So let's remove that as an internal curve, hit the check mark. I can select this, and if I try to delete it, it says, hey, you're going to end up with a problem over here. You can unlink or suspend. I'm going to cancel out and just manually go to the surfaces and remove what was being used as the internal curve. Grab this one, remove the internal curve, and hit the check mark. So again, sometimes I like to show you, like, hey, these are some paths that you can go down that are actually wrong. What the heck am I holding down the wrong keys on the keyboard? So this is how you can adjust from it. And let's go back and hide some of these different surfaces. And I'm going to get rid of this particular curve. Let's delete it. And now I'm going to create a curve just between these two, so I don't have to, alter the side surfaces. So again, we will create a curve, and it's going to be a planar curve. You can see the outline. I'll do the shift, grab a point, shift, grab a point, hit the check mark, and again, it's just a straight line. Hey, let's double click to edit, right click on it, and then add a midpoint, and adjust the shape of it And maybe I can go over here and say, hey, let's make this one horizontal and this one horizontal, and then adjust the shape over here, a little more regular shape-ish. And while I'm at it for creating different curves, let me hit the check mark. Let me create another curve to control the shape of the intermediate surface. So for the new curve, let's let's deselect everything, right mouse click and create a new curve and change it to a free curve. And I'm going to hold down the shift key and grab the edge, and then hold down the shift key again and click on this curve. And one thing about having these curves that are going to be internal curves, if you have the curves going in opposite directions, they have to intersect each other. And if you think about it, it would be impossible for a curve to be created using both of these cross curves as internal curves if they did not intersect one another. So let's go to this curve, double click on it. And I don't know why it keeps on, even though it's a free curve, for some reason it's still highlighting that plane as a reference. Let's see if I can remove that. Let's click on this point, and I want to see about the tangency. Maybe let's see, will surface tangent work? And select the surface to be tangent to. And yeah, that looks good in there. Let's see, let's grab this point. Oh yeah, one other thing I want to do about the point, to make it exactly right in the middle, I could use a value of 0.5 for the length ratio. Doesn't like that. For some reason it wants to use a reference. I'm actually going to change this to a different plane. Let me go to plane. Let me use it as a plane or a reference for some reason. Let's use Y0. Z. All right, let's go to here. We have the point. Let's see if it'll let me punch in the value of 0.5 now. Yeah. And let me unclutter the screen. It's trying to zoom in and accidentally hit the middle mouse button. Let me grab the endpoint. There we go. Grab the tangency and adjust it. You know what? I don't want it to have a value of 0.5. Oh, now I'm starting to get the shape that I want. So, again, that's why they call it freeform modding. It's a little more artistic than if you're doing this in standard mode. And, yeah, I'm like that, maybe a little more downwards as it goes through here. There we go. Yeah, all right. So let's say that I like that particular curve in there. That way I've got a little bit more control over what'll be the intermediate surface. And I can grab this, and as I grab this, you'll notice that it's also tweaking the other curve. All right, let's hit the check mark to complete that. Let's bring back our surfaces. And really, it's just this last surface that I want to adjust. So let's double click on it. And then we can activate our internal collector. And I'll select this curve and hold down the control key and grab this other curve. I'll say yes, let's remove those surface connections. And I'm actually liking that a lot. Let's hit the check mark, and I'm pretty happy with those different surfaces that I generated. Now, one thing to note is that we are getting a little bit of stuff in here that I don't like. An alternative technique is that you could bring this curve, instead of going all the way to this end over here, you could make it a little more rectangular by going inside of here and then maybe using an end-sided surface. But just be aware there are a variety of different techniques that you can employ, and it's all about getting it looking aesthetically pleasing, organic in nature, the way that you want it to be. But I'm happy with my style geometry, my curves, and my surfaces. Let's hit the check mark, and now I'm back into standard mode, and you can see the surfaces that I generated. I can use it like any old other surfaces. I can end up merging these surfaces together and then thickening them in order to create solid geometry. I hope you enjoyed this video. For more information, please visit www.creowindshield.com. If you learned something from this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you like this video, please click the subscribe button and ring the bell to be informed when new videos are uploaded. Thank you very much.